Everyone knows that stars fall from the sky, but no one knew that one night the stars would fall into the sea. That was the night the Starlight Lighthouse began to go dark. At the top of the tower, the great round platform sat empty. Not a single falling star landed on its brass rim. The lighthouse beam flickered once, faded, and flickered again, like an eye too tired to stay open. Ollie stood beside the platform with his soft deer leather brush in his hand. He had been waiting for the first star of the night, ready to polish it until it shone bright enough to guide the ships below. But the sky above him was silent, as if someone had pulled a deep blue blanket over the world. No stars, no wind, not even the hush of the waves. Then, from his little room, came a knock. It was not the door. It was the small silver cabinet in the corner. Knock. Ollie froze. Knock. The lighthouse dimmed a little more. Knock. Only then did Ollie remember the ship. Every night before dawn, the first ship crossed the dark water below the clouds. If the lighthouse went out, that ship would have no beam to follow. It would drift through fog and moonless waves with no way home. Ollie was the keeper of the Starlight Lighthouse. The lighthouse did not stand on rocks or beside a harbour. It floated between the clouds and the sea, where the sky was cold and the ocean seemed to have no end. By day, the tower looked like a silver shell hidden in mist. By night, the round platform at its top turned slowly, catching the stars that fell from the heavens. Ollie's job was simple, or at least it sounded simple. He cleaned each fallen star with his brush, then placed it back into the lighthouse light. That light travelled through clouds, through rain, and across the blackest water, showing lost ships where to go. It sounded like an important job, but Ollie did not always feel important. He was still small. He barely reached the windowsill. When the wind blew hard, he had to wrap both arms around the lamppost to keep from sliding across the floor. The old machines inside the lighthouse clicked and sighed in the dark, as if they were wiser than he was. Sometimes Ollie wondered if a real keeper should be taller, braver, the kind of person who never shook when the lights went dim. He was only a boy who brushed stars clean. In his room stood the silver cabinet. It was not very large, and it rested on thin legs shaped almost like fish bones. Wind patterns curled across its doors. Ollie had never opened it. Before the old keeper left, he had said only one thing about it: open it when you know what you are looking for. Ollie had never known. Some said the cabinet held the colour of the wind. Others said it kept the sound of the very first star that ever fell. Ollie liked to imagine there was a map inside, one that would show him how to become a true keeper. But tonight, the cabinet had found him first. Ollie walked slowly back into his room. His fingers stayed tight around the brush handle. He wanted to pretend he had not heard anything, but a thin line of pale green light slipped through the cabinet door. The light moved across the floor like a tiny fish, then unfolded into a glowing note. There was only one sentence written on it: "The light has sunk to the bottom of the sea." If no one brings it back tonight, the first ship will be lost before dawn. Ollie's throat went dry. He knew there were people on that ship. People who might be drinking tea in the dark. People who might be thinking about home. People who had no idea the lighthouse was dying above them. He looked at the cabinet. Its doors were closed again, but a soft wind whispered from inside, as if someone in the dark was waiting for his answer. Ollie lifted his brush, slung his small woven basket over his arm, and placed 3 old star fragments inside it. They were the last emergency lights in the tower. When he opened the door to leave, the lighthouse beam faded again. This time it did not come back. The ladder to the sea hung along the outside of the lighthouse. Ollie had always disliked that ladder. There was nothing beneath his boots but open air, dark blue water far below, and clouds drifting past like sleepy giants. On windy nights, the ladder creaked as if it were thinking about letting go, but tonight there was no other way down. Ollie climbed carefully, one rung at a time. The star fragments in his basket clicked softly together. The sound comforted him. At least he still carried a little light. His small wooden boat waited in the lighthouse shadow. A sleeping moon was painted on its bow. Ollie climbed in and took hold of the oars. Behind him, the Starlight Lighthouse floated high above the clouds. Its beam was weaker than before, no brighter than a candle seen through fog. Ollie rowed toward the deep sea. At first the water was smooth and black like glass. Each stroke of the oars sounded too loud, travelling farther than it should. Ollie felt less like he was rowing across the ocean and more like he was moving through a huge empty room. He did not sing. He barely breathed. He was afraid of waking whatever waited beneath the surface. After a while, he heard a low whimpering sound. It came from behind a reef. Ollie tightened his hands around the oars and guided the boat closer. Beside the rocks crouched an albatross, larger than any bird he had ever seen. Its wings could have covered half the boat, but now they hung heavy and wet. Black sticky tar clung to its feathers, dragging the tips into the water. When the bird saw Ollie, it shrank back. "I'm not here to hurt you," Ollie whispered. The albatross lowered its head. Its voice was rough, like it had swallowed too much salt water. "I can't fly. I can't see the lighthouse. I can't find the wind that takes me home." Ollie remembered the note. "The light has sunk to the bottom of the sea." He had not found the light yet. He had only 3 star fragments in his basket. Each one mattered. If he used one, the way back would be darker. He opened the basket. The fragments glowed softly inside. The albatross did not beg. It only tucked its head into its ruined feathers and trembled. Ollie thought of the ship that would come before dawn. If the lighthouse went out, the people on that ship would be just like this bird, lost in the dark, with no direction home. He took out the first star fragment. Then he placed it gently against the albatross's wing. Warm light spread through the feathers. The black tar loosened, melted, and slipped away in quiet drops. The albatross stretched one wing, then the other. The sea breeze caught beneath them at last. The great bird lifted into the air. It circled above Ollie's boat, and water fell from its feathers like a brief shower of stars. "Go where the sea gives no answer," the albatross called. "If the water does not echo you, you are close to the truth." Then it flew away into the night. Ollie watched until the bird became a pale shape among the clouds. He was just beginning to feel brave when the boat sank slightly under him. He looked down. One drop of black tar had not disappeared. It clung to the side of the boat, round and shiny, like an open eye. Ollie scraped at the black drop with his oar until it finally slid from the boat. It fell into the sea. There was no splash, no ripple. It simply vanished, as if it had never been there at all. That frightened Ollie more than he wanted to admit. The sea grew darker. Moonlight could not reach it. Starlight could not touch it. Ahead of the boat lay a patch of water with no waves at all. Ollie dipped an oar into it. The surface did not move. He whispered his own name. No echo came back. This was the place the albatross had meant, the sea that gave no answer. Ollie wanted to turn around. Truly, he did. He had already begun to shift the oar when he saw a faint white glow far ahead. It rose and fell in the dark, like someone carrying a lantern beneath the water. Ollie bit his lip and rowed on. Then a deep sound rolled up from below. It was so low that it seemed to pass through the boat, through Ollie's ribs, through the whole sea. The little boat lurched. Ollie grabbed the side just as a massive shadow rose beneath the water. It blocked the stars. It blocked the last pale glow ahead. And slowly, it moved toward him. Ollie's mind went blank. A monster. That was the only word he could think of. The shadow came closer. Waves pushed the boat backward. Ollie tried to row away, but the oars felt trapped, as if the sea itself were holding them down. The 2 remaining star fragments clicked in his basket. He had 2 left. If he used one, he might see what was coming. If he did not, he might still have enough light to escape. Ollie reached into the basket, then stopped. He was so afraid he could hardly breathe. But the sound inside the shadow was not a roar. It was a sob, a quiet, careful sob, like a giant child crying under a blanket and trying not to be heard. Ollie took out the 2nd star fragment. When the light opened in his hand, the shadow changed. It was not a monster. It was a whale. A huge whale, larger than the lighthouse platform, with wet lashes and sorrowful eyes. Thick volcanic ash had clogged the place where it needed to breathe. Every breath it tried to take sounded painful. Ollie was still scared. The whale was so enormous he had to lean back just to see its eye. But he lifted his brush. "Hold still," he said softly. "I'll try." The whale became very still. Ollie rowed closer. Standing in the rocking boat, he brushed away the ash bit by bit. It clung stubbornly. Soon the brush was black, and Ollie's sleeves were soaked, Every time the whale shivered, the boat tilted. More than once, Ollie nearly slipped into the water. At last, the final layer of ash came free. The whale breathed. A tall column of water rose into the moonlight and scattered into a soft rainbow shimmer. For one bright second, it lit a path leading down into the deep. The whale lowered its broad back beside the boat. Ollie understood. His palms were damp. If he went down, he might not come back. But if he did not go, the lighthouse might not last until dawn. He climbed onto the whale's back. Just before the whale sank beneath the waves, Ollie looked over his shoulder. Far above the clouds, the Starlight Lighthouse had faded to a single point of light, like an eye about to close. When the water folded over him, Ollie thought he would be cold, but the water around the whale was warm. Rainbow light drifted from its back and wrapped around Ollie like a clear bubble, keeping the sea from touching him. Down they went, deeper and deeper, until the boat vanished, the wind vanished, and even the lighthouse seemed like something from a dream. The world became the slow heartbeat of the whale, and Ollie's own small breath. They passed through an underwater forest. The trees had no leaves, but their branches glowed blue like coral. Tiny transparent fish followed them, staring at Ollie with bright, curious eyes. Farther down, a clock tower lay half buried in sand. Its face had no hands, only rings of silver stardust. For a little while, Ollie forgot to be afraid. Then he saw the stars. They lay across the seafloor in a wide, glowing plain, one beside another, like thousands of sleeping lamps. Some were as big as pumpkins, some were no larger than buttons. They were not dead. Their light rose and fell softly, like breathing in a dream. Ollie slipped from the whale's back and landed on the soft sand. His heart leaped. If he could bring these stars back, the lighthouse would shine again. The ship would be safe. The silver cabinet's secret would finally make sense. Perhaps the old keeper would hear about it one day and say that Ollie had become a true keeper after all. Ollie opened his basket. It was empty. He stared at it. The last star fragment was gone. He searched the basket again, even feeling along the little woven seams at the bottom. Nothing. The first fragment had helped the Albatross. The second had helped the whale. The third had disappeared without him noticing. Ollie stood on the sea floor and felt smaller than ever. Without a star fragment, how could he wake the stars? Without the stars, how could he relight the tower? And without the tower, what would happen to the ship coming before dawn? He imagined someone standing on the deck, looking into the fog, waiting for a light that never came. Ollie's eyes grew hot. He tried not to cry, but a few tears escaped anyway. Under the sea, they became round little beads of water floating in front of him. Then one of the stars moved. Not all of them, only the nearest one. It brightened, then dimmed, as if it were listening. Ollie reached for the small star, but it did not fly into his hand. It only brightened again, then faded, waiting. Behind him, the whale gave a low call. Ollie turned. and saw a long crack at the far edge of the starry plain. Black smoke drifted from it in thin curling streams. The smoke crept across the sand like long fingers, wrapping around the sleeping stars. Whenever it touched one, that star grew dimmer. The stars had not chosen to sleep. Something was keeping them from waking. Ollie gripped his brush and walked toward the crack. The closer he came, the darker everything became. The black smoke slid around his boots and climbed up his trousers. He shook it off, but more smoke poured from the crack. Then he heard a voice. It did not come from in front of him. It did not come from behind him. It seemed to rise from the smallest, most hidden place inside his own heart. Go back. You are only a boy who cleans stars. Ollie stopped. The voice knew the thing he feared most. He was not the old keeper. He had no map. He had no magic. He did not even have a star fragment left. He had been too frightened to open the silver cabinet for years. The smoke curled tighter. In the distance, one star after another began to fade. The whale tried to swim toward him, but a dark current pushed it back. Ollie knew that if he turned around now, the whale might still carry him to the surface. Perhaps the lighthouse would glow a little longer. At least he would not have to stand in the darkest place. Then he remembered the albatross's trembling wings. He remembered the whale's patient, painful eye. And he remembered the words on the note. The first ship will be lost before dawn. Ollie looked down at his hands. There, on his fingertips, was a faint golden mark. It had appeared when he helped the albatross. Then his wrist began to glow too, where he had brushed ash from the whale. Finally, warm starlight shimmered in the bristles of his brush. The last star fragment had not been lost. It had become part of what he had done. It had hidden itself in him. Ollie lifted the brush and swept it gently through the black smoke. The first stroke did nothing. The second made the light on the brush grow dim. On the third stroke, Ollie heard something far away. It sounded like tiny bells ringing underwater. The stars were beginning to wake. Ollie understood then. A keeper was not the person who owned the most light. A keeper was the one who still shared a little light when everything around him was dark. He brushed again. The smoke twisted violently. Deep inside the crack, a great eyeless shadow began to rise. The shadow had no face. It had no hands. It was only darkness, deeper than night, rising from the crack and swallowing every bit of light around it. Ollie could no longer see the whale. He could not see the stars. He could not even see his own fingers. But he could still feel the brush. It was warm in his hand, like a tiny heart. Then Ollie heard the wind from the silver cabinet. It should have been impossible. The cabinet was far away in the lighthouse, locked in his little room. But the sound was there, beside his ear, soft and clear. You are not looking for light. Ollie froze. Not light? Then what was he looking for? The shadow pressed closer. Sand lifted from the sea floor. The sleeping stars rolled and trembled. Ollie closed his eyes. He did not ask the cabinet another question. He did not wait for an answer. Instead, he remembered the first night he had ever polished a star. He had been too short to reach the platform. The old keeper had lifted him up and placed the brush in his hand. "Do not worry about lighting the whole tower," the old keeper had said. "Start with the star in front of you. Just this one." Ollie opened his eyes. He placed the brush against the nearest sleeping star. He did not push, he did not hurry. He brushed it the way he always had, carefully and gently, one stroke at a time. Behind him, the shadow rolled and the smoke wrapped around his shoulders, but Ollie did not turn away. The star lit, then the next one, and the next, and the next. The light did not wake because Ollie commanded it. It woke as if each star had remembered its own name. Across the sea floor, the starry plain began to glow. The shadow shrank back. The smoke thinned in the growing light. The whale returned and swept its enormous tail across the dark current. The albatross dove from the water above, its wings carrying wind into the deep. Together they scattered the last of the smoke. Only then did Ollie understand. They had not left him. They had been waiting. But the lighthouse above was almost gone. From far above the sea came a horn. The ship. The first ship before dawn had reached the fog. Ollie had no time to gather the stars. He could never fit the whole sea floor into his basket. He looked at the waking stars and knew what he had to do. He raised the brush over his head and gave away every bit of warm light he carried. For one breath, the sea was still. Then all the stars rose at once. The stars rose from the sea floor like rain falling upward. They passed through the water, through the darkness, and through the last sleeping hour before dawn. The whale carried Ollie toward the surface, while the albatross flew ahead, opening a path through the deep. The surface drew nearer. Above it, the first grey light of morning waited. But Ollie felt himself growing lighter. He looked down and saw that his fingers had become almost transparent. He had given away so much light that he could barely hold onto the whale's back. He did not tell the whale. He did not call out to the albatross. He only kept his eyes open and watched the stars race toward the lighthouse. Then the Starlight Lighthouse blazed. It did not brighten slowly. It burst awake, as if the whole night had suddenly remembered the sun. Light poured from the tower, swept over the clouds, and streamed across the fog below. Far away, a small ship emerged from the mist. Its bow had drifted off course. Dark rocks waited ahead. The lighthouse beam touched the water just in time. On the ship, someone turned the wheel. The vessel slid past the rocks so closely that silver spray leaped along its side. Ollie saw it and smiled. Then he slipped from the whale's back. The whale called out, deep and sorrowful. The albatross dove toward him, but before Ollie could sink, a warm glow caught him. It did not come from the stars. It did not come from the lighthouse. It came from his own chest, soft and steady, like a nightlight. When Ollie opened his eyes again, he was lying beside the round platform at the top of the lighthouse. His dear leather brush rested beside him, clean and dry, as if it had never touched smoke. Above him Falling stars crossed the sky one after another, landing on the platform and joining the lighthouse beam. Ollie sat up slowly. His legs trembled as he made his way back to his little room. In the corner, the silver cabinet was glowing. This time, it did not knock. Its door opened by itself. Ollie stood before the silver cabinet for a long time before he reached for it. He thought there might be a map inside. Perhaps a map of the crack beneath the sea. Perhaps a map to the place where stars were born. He had also imagined the colour of the wind, sealed in a tiny bottle, ready to turn the whole room green, or blue, or gold. But inside the cabinet there was no map, no bottle, only a small mirror. Its frame was silver, carved with the same curling wind patterns as the cabinet doors. Ollie lifted it carefully. The mirror did not show his room. It did not show his messy hair. At first, it showed the albatross rising into the night, water falling from its wings like stars. Then it showed the whale breathing again, its moonlit spray turning into rainbow light. Then it showed the stars beneath the sea, waking one by one. At last, the mirror showed Ollie. He stood before the darkest crack with only a brush in his hand. And he did not run away. Ollie understood what the old keeper had meant. Open it, when you know what you are looking for. He had spent the whole night searching for light. But light was not the only thing he had found. He had found the small voice inside himself that used to hide and whisper, "You are too little. You cannot do this." Now that voice was quiet. It had fallen asleep in the glow of the lighthouse. Outside the window, dawn was almost here. Far below, the ship sounded its horn. The note drifted through the sea mist and reached the tower gently, like a thank you. Ollie placed the mirror back inside the cabinet. He did not close the door all the way. Perhaps one day he would forget why he stayed in the lighthouse. If that happened, he could look into the mirror again. He walked to the window. Wind moved through the room, carrying the scent of salt, stardust, and something he could not quite name. Ollie held out his hand. The wind slipped between his fingers. And at last, he knew. The colour of the wind was not hidden inside the cabinet. When wind passes someone brave, it turns gold. After that night, the Starlight Lighthouse shone on time every evening. Ollie still polished fallen stars with his dear leather brush. He still nearly fell over when the wind blew too hard. He was still afraid of the dark sometimes, and he still could not always reach the highest part of the platform. But he no longer believed he was only a boy who cleaned stars. Because a true keeper is not someone who is never afraid. A true keeper is someone who is afraid and still leaves a light burning for someone else. Late at night, ships saw that light. Tired birds saw that light. And somewhere beneath the waves, a gentle whale saw it too. In the smallest room of the lighthouse, Ollie often fell asleep with his cheek against the windowsill. The silver cabinet stood half open, its mirror quietly holding the stars. Sometimes, when the wind moved through the room, the cabinet door made the softest sound, knock, as if one more secret was still waiting to be told.